Stamford Bridge, one of the most iconic stadiums in English football history and the home of Chelsea. It's seen everything in the club's 120-year history. Financial woes, mammoth takeovers, the special one, Premier League titles and incredible Champions League nights. And of course, iconic players as well. Gianfranco Zola, Gianluca Vialli, Didier Drogba, Frank Lampard. The list goes on and on. But today it's been reported that the bridge could be ripped down and rebuilt, with Chelsea chairman and co-owner Todd Boehly saying, I think we're going to be building something new. In times like these, you need to speak to the people that this means the most to, the fans. I'm pleased to say that joining me now is the host of Chelsea Fan TV and season ticket holder, Alex Harris. Alex, let's get straight into it then. First things first, do you want a straight rebuild for Chelsea and Stamford Bridge, or would you be happy to move elsewhere?
To be honest with you, I can see both sides of it. If I had to choose, just off the top of my head, I would say move somewhere else. As long as it's close enough, not a million miles away, within 5-10 miles, I don't think we can complain. London's a difficult place to rebuild. We know that we've got a lot of issues with Stamford Bridge as well, because you're only capped up to about 60,000. So if you want to upgrade the stadium, you've got about 20,000 extra seats, and then there's no point of going any further because you can't. So that's the debate that a lot of people are having. And I know that a lot of the CPO shareholders, the Chelsea pitch owners, they are very keen to remain at Stamford Bridge, the majority of people I speak to within the CPO. But what people don't seem to realise as well is that the majority of CPO shareholders are older fans. You don't actually have that many young fans that are in the CPO. It's quite expensive. It's about £125. But if you want to have a say, that's the only way you can do it. If you genuinely want to have a vote on that decision, if it was to happen. The thing is, if we relocate to Earls Court, for example, and I know people have spoken about that location, we are totally uncapped. We can look at 80, 100,000 seats within the future. And that is something that we can look at and say, oh, we can actually do it. A bit like when you have a great owner, you say, we can buy this great player. If you've got the money, you can get anyone, right? Whereas we can't do that right now at Stamford Bridge. So for that reason and that reason alone, I think it's silly to remain at Stamford Bridge, just from the perspective that Chelsea are going to be left behind financially in terms of match days and then the revenue that they can bring in as well.
One of the things that Todd Boehly said is that Stamford Bridge is very cramped. But is that what makes it so special? I mean, that's just a traditional football stadium, is it not?
It's great, and you look at, Craven Cottage is a good example of Fulham, West Ham, when they were at Upton Park, they had a good atmosphere. Tottenham at White Hart Lane is totally different to what they have now in West Ham's case and Tottenham's as well. The thing is, with a bigger stadium, you just have more pull as a club, ultimately. And that's what these owners are looking at. And we're not looking at a local owner like Ken Bates, an Englishman, or Abramovich, who loves the club and wants the best for the fan base, cares about the atmosphere. Boehly doesn't care about any of that. Boehly cares about maximising profits and bringing revenue into the club, which can then be taken out. Okay, ultimately, the more money the club make, the more profitable the club is, then that means that it can be sold on for a better profit further down the line. In Boehly's case, I know he wants to be here for a long time, so he's in no rush to do it, which is why he said, he's happy to wait 16 to 20 years. Whereas you look at Clearlake and Egg Barley, they haven't even spoken about rebuilding a stadium. And that's actually it's very interesting when you look at it, because Chelsea are owned by private equity, okay? So you have one side, which is Boehly's consortium, Hansi Wiss, Mark Walter, Boehly, right? Boehly controls the shares for that. He represents that consortium. And then you've got about 62% covered by Clearlake. Now, if you look at what private equity care about, the history of private equity, right? I'm just basing what I've heard from people who work in that industry. They go in for around 3 to 10 years, all right, when they invest in companies. In this case, Chelsea is a business to them, right? And they will be looking to exit by 2033. Now, why haven't Clearlake spoken about a new stadium? It's obvious, because they don't want a new stadium. They will not be involved in a new stadium while Chelsea Football Club are here, because Private equity care about free operating cash flow, which means profits, essentially. That's the best way I can describe it. The only way you can prove cash flow in football is with the Brighton model. And the Brighton model is to buy set players and sell them at a profit and have a really low wage structure where only 10% of your revenues are being spent on wages. And the problem with building a new stadium is that it's a cash flow deficit. So let's look at Tottenham, for example. You know, they built their new stadium. I think their financials came out not long ago. They're not a profitable club at the moment. Can you believe that? Tottenham are not a profitable club with their stadium. And that's because even though they've built this new stadium, which is fantastic, and 20 years down the line, they will be making a lot of money from it. They have to pay that money off, right? They have to service their debts. So that's the issue that we have, is that we've already taken on so much debt as a football club. We took £700 million from the banks. We took £500 million from Ares. So we've already got about £1.2 billion in debt. And the issue as well is the debt that we took from Ares Capital is it's subordinated debt. What that means is that by 2033, purely that 500 million that we borrowed, we'll have to pay 1.7 billion pounds back on top of the 700 million that we borrowed from the banks, which is 2.5 billion. So if we were to sell the club in 2033 for 2.5 billion, the owners would make nothing. That's just paying off their debts. So you can understand why we're in a really precarious position from Clearlake's standpoint to be profitable. Because if they can't sell the club for much more than 2.5 billion, on top of paying back their debts, then they're not going to make any money out of this, which is why they will not be involved in a stadium.
Mate, as we already know, Chelsea's form has been up and down over the last couple of years, and moving to a new stadium, you think of Arsenal moving into the Emirates, Spurs, the redevelopment of the old White Hart Lane into the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. It hampered them on the pitch. Chelsea's young squad, the new generation that they're trying to bring through, could these changes and moving into a new stadium, like we've seen it through history, could these changes impact all of that on the pitch?
We are basically not prioritising success on the pitch. Every decision that's being made is with the finances in mind. And this is why we don't sign players over the age of 25. This is why we have a specific wage cap, which again, we'll look to model what Brighton are doing, which is about 10% of the money Chelsea bring in will be spent on wages. That will free up 90% of money for other things. Again, we go back to cash flow as well. So we're going to be selling players on. And you can't buy expensive players for 100 million and sell them for much profit. It just doesn't happen. So you have to go in the markets like we've done in Portugal recently. We spent 70 million on those two youngsters. And we're probably going to be looking at that in mind to sell those guys on for a profit, thinking that, right, these are two of the best young players in world football in their positions for their age group. If we spent 40 million for them now, maybe we can get 80 million for them in 5 years. And that's what ultimately they're looking at. They're looking at future profits, which is a very risky game. You know, you're rolling the dice with every transfer you make. But when you're an investor, you can look at that and say, by the time it gets to 2033, those young players that we were invested in, 10 years ago, 2023, they were 17. Now they're 27. They're still at the peak of their career. So those players still have value. And that is what we have in mind with everything we're doing. And if we ended up selling Palmer, let's just say for 120 million, then they've got Esteval who comes in, they've got Kendry Pires who come in, and the cycle repeats itself. Obviously, we need success on the pitch. There's no doubt about that. But what is success? Is it trophies? Is it top four? And you can easily see that trophies is not a priority because we haven't prioritized domestic competitions really this season under Enzo Maresca. And the Conference League is, I mean, you have to try not to win it in order to not win it. So I don't think that trophies is a big priority, but Champions League is going to be massive for us because that will increase the wage threshold by about 30%. And that will obviously help us attract players as well. But I do think it's a bit of a facade when we talk about trophies. Like, what do you look at Chelsea and say, Oh yeah, they're trying to win. Like, where's the statement signing? Where's the final piece of the puzzle? It's like, okay, we know we need a striker. We had the chance. We were literally there for Victor Osimhen, and we went extra 50 grand, no chance. Can you imagine that? 50 grand, and the amount of money that some of these ownerships in world football will spend in order to get a player that can lock up a title or even push them to that next level. We won't spend an extra £50,000 a week in order to get a world class striker. So that's where we are. We're penny pinchers FC. We're hedge fund FC. We're stock market FC, and that's the reality of it.
It makes you think at the same time as well. You speak about Manchester United and their new stadium plans. In my opinion, a bit of an eyesore. I think a lot of fans, Manchester United and neutrals, are stuck in between as well. You either love it or you hate it. If Chelsea are going to rebuild, how paramount is it that they make it look nice rather than Butlin's Minehead with Manchester United?
I mean, yeah, I mean, I've seen the criticism about United's new stadium. Do you know what it is, though? At least their owner supports Man United. Like, he must have the best interests of Man United. I know people don't like Jim Radcliffe, all the rest of it. For me, I'd rather have Jim Radcliffe at my club. Supposing he was a Chelsea fan. Like, I'd rather have an owner like that who is a boyhood fan, who cares about the club. Like, people can talk all they want about him stripping people's jobs, etc., etc. Jim Radcliffe has put over £300 million of his own money into Manchester United this season, if I'm not wrong. And our owners would never dare do that. They borrow money. They do not put their own money. They don't risk their own pockets. So everything that Chelsea does is, oh, what can we get for this? We invest this money, but we're going to get much more back. And I don't think Jim Radcliffe operates in that way. I think that he invests the money to actually, improve Manchester United. As strange as it sounds, I'd much rather have an owner like that. But we'll have to see over the next couple of years how it shapes out. Obviously, they don't have the restrictions that we do with Old Trafford. They can build basically anywhere within that site, and they have so much space to do it. And we don't have that luxury. So if he was operating in London, obviously it'd be a different kettle of fish.